Hello everyone, I hope you're well. I just thought we'd have a little play this time, just not necessarily finished samples, but a little play with our stencils. So warm welcome to my YouTube channel. And what I've done is I've just cut a few pieces of Pink Frog Super Smooth card, 4 inches square, and I've cut some of the craft card, 4 inches square. I don't even know how many I've cut, it's just random. And what I thought we'd do is, why don't we have a little play with our stencils? So I've got my snippet stencils, 4 by 4 inches. And I'm going to bring in my Stencils die cutting machine, and we're going to emboss the stencils. So I've got a little note here of my combination that I need to have to emboss the stencils. So this is the standard BigShot. Hang on a minute, have I got anything else on here? Yes, you have. So it's saying that I want the standard platform, which is that. We'll soon know if it works anyway, won't we? So let's put it in this way. So it's saying I want my standard platform, my cutting pad. So I've got my cutting pad, my stencil. So let's take the stencil. Now I'm not inking it or anything, I'm just going to emboss it. So I've got the stencil. Now if you've got ink on this, you place the inky side. Oh no, yes, that's right, yes. Stencil. Why does it say inky side down? Stencil. So standard cutting plate, standard platform, cutting pad, stencil, then my card. So let's take the card, which I've cut to perfectly coordinate with the size of the stencil, which is 4 by 4. Yeah. Then the silicone rubber mat. So I've got like a, is this the silicone rubber mat? This is my silicone rubber mat. You can tell I don't do it frequently enough. And then I have my, is this that? I've got my impressions pad. So I've got my impressions pad, which is this. So it's a little bit thicker. So an impressions pad from Stencils. You will work out your own combination for your machine. So this is to emboss stencils. And I don't know whether I've got that right or not, because it's too soft. Have I got the wrong mat? Hang on a minute. So is that not the silicone mat? Oh, it's done it. As you can see, it's embossed on there. It's like there's a bit of ink on my stencil. But I'm wondering whether, is that the silicone mat or is this the silicone mat? Let me see. Let's try this one. So let's try this again, but place some craft card down. I've now got me cut. So let's place some craft card down. So standard platform, cutting pad, stencil, card. And then the silicone mat, I'm wondering whether that's the silicone mat. I always get confused. And then my impressions pad. Now let's see what that looks like. It's a little bit tighter. And let's see if that's even better. So this is on craft card. So you can see I've now got the stenciling on there, as you can see. But what I'm going to do now is let's take another stencil. So this is where you end up with stencils everywhere. Where have I just put my stencils? There they are. So this time, let's use the chevrons. So the same platform cutting pad. There you go, cutting pad. And then we want our stencil. So I've got the chevrons. And this time, let's take some white card, but let's spritz the card with water. So I've just spritzed that a little bit with water. And let's place that onto our card. Let's make sure it's quite level. So that's spritzed with water. Then we'll take our silicone or rubber mat, whichever. I don't think this is silicone, you know, but it definitely gives it a deeper impression. What does that? Oh, silicone rubber mat. Oh, it is the grey one, but it should be the grey one, not this one. You two can faff as much as I can because I've just seen the packaging. So this is the silicone rubber mat and then the impressions plate. So I've just wet that. I mean, that's not too much pressure at all. But definitely, I'd say with the moisture, we definitely get a deeper emboss with a little bit of water. So let's this time do that one on the craft card. So we'll do that on the craft card. So again, so you can see my silicone rubber mat for embossing, which was from Sizzix. So you've got your standard platform. I know what my standard platform is. It's with this, isn't it? So let's try it with that. So the standard platform with the thin adapter. Let's see if it works any different with that. Then your cutting plate. Then your cutting plate. Then your stencil. We've got the stencil. Then I'm going to spritz the craft card with water. And I'm doing that off camera just so that I don't spritz everything everywhere. But you can see that's got moisture on there. We'll place that down onto there. Then we'll take our silicone mat. And then we'll take the impressions pad. I mean, don't forget, I've had this machine a long time, so some combinations may change. So let's just see if that's a little bit better. I think because I've got that. No, I don't think that's right because, as you can see, look, it's forcing. Let's bring this back. Don't force your machine. So you can tell I had got it right in the first place. So we don't need that. So it's important you just test your combinations. You see, this goes through like a dream and it looks like you're hardly doing anything. So what I'm saying is you need to play about a bit. So let's have a look at this now. And you can see I've got that embossed on there. Turn that over so you can see that embossing. And what I'm going to do this time is, let's grab another stencil. So what stencil we're going to grab this time? Let's grab the bird stencil. And this time we'll take a piece of white card. But what we'll do is we'll put a piece of card underneath as like a shim. Place that on the top. And then we'll have another piece of white card. So let's spritz this with water because it does seem to make a difference when you spritz with water, because it's a little bit deeper. So then we get our little silicone mat, and then I'm using my impression pad that's a little bit thicker. So now I've put a piece of card in there as an extra shim, and it's going through quite easily. I'm not forcing anything. Let's see what kind of embossing we get then. Don't forget, I've got ink and things on my stencil. So you can see it's embossed, and we've now got the bird embossed on there. Let's try it on a piece of craft card, but this time we'll use that anyway. Let's time. That is such good English. Let me just trying to do a shim, but that's too big. So I'm going to put a shim underneath, see if it makes a difference. Got my stencil, got my 4x4 inch piece, and I'm giving that a little spritz with water. Add that to my piece. Then the silicone rubber mat. Now, if you emboss your stencils on a piece of 4x6, you also get the outline of the stencil, which is a nice touch as well. Let's have a look at that. So I think with a little bit of a shim, yes, it makes it a little bit more. Can you see? You've now got that bird embossed on there, which you can see there. So let's see if you can do a couple of shims, but this is why you should practice. So we've done the bird, so what shall we do next? Shall we do the fern? So let's do the fern. Let's take a piece of white card, which is a bit grubby, but hey ho, we're having a play. So I've spritzed with water. And I'm going to, what you're going to do, add your silicone mat. Then you're going to add your impression pad. Let's go through there. Let's just, and then you can see that's just a mark I'd had on the card. Look how beautifully that fern embosses. Doesn't that look lovely? Just works beautifully. Just wonderfully. You can see the edge of the stencil that you can get a little bit of the detail on. So let's try a piece of craft card with the same. And I've got a couple of shims on there. Which way, Tracy? Let's try that way. So again, the craft card I've moistened with a little bit of water. Then we'll add our silicone rubber mat. Then I'm going to add my impression pad. Let's just go through there. Can either static, but you can see that's embossed, but look how lovely that looks on craft. Isn't that lovely? Okay, and then let's use the vine. Let's use the vine. I've got a piece of white card here. Let's give that a spritz with some water. Let's spritz the card with water. And add to the card, use our silicone rubber mat, then the impressions pad. There we go. And you can see that that has embossed. Look how beautiful that looks embossed. How gorgeous is that? Oh, yum, yum, yum. Let's do that with craft card. So we're now going to spritz this with water. Let's spritz that with water. And then we'll use our silicone rubber mat, the impressions pad, which I am sure is thicker. Let's have a look. Yes, it's thicker than your cutting pads. So you're using that sort of impression pad instead of your cutting plate, or your standard plates on the top. I'll just keep dropping this so that it makes a nice loud noise. And now look at that on craft. Just doesn't that look lovely? Right, so that's that one. Now we've got the heart. So let's just move this on here. And if we wanted to, we could, let's grab it's going to take me forever. Let's just test, particularly on craft, just for the final one. So if I stamp an image, so if I take the Abutalon, let's take that Abutalon. Can you see I've got bits of card in there, bits of everything. So if I take the Abutalon and we stamp that in black, and I should have my black ink pad somewhere. Before you start work, always make sure that you've got the products you need, unlike me. First time ever, I don't know where my VersaFine Clair is. How can you not know where the VersaFine Clair is, Tracy? No idea where my normal VersaFine Clair is, but there you go. Let's use this new one. Just because I don't know where my normal one is, I'll look for that in a bit. That's what happens when you don't stick it in the normal place. And you've put it back in the wrong place. And now it's going to drive you mad. No idea where that is. So let's use this one. It's a brand new ink. Let's add this to here. So this will soak into that craft really nicely. So it should soak in there really nicely. So just give that a little bit of time. There we go. That soaks in there really, really nicely. And then, oh, I lifted that up then as if it weighed a ton. So you're just going to add that so you can make sure you've got it in any particular place. These pieces of card are 4 by 4. And let's take our impressions pad. And then we can run that through there. So you just get a little bit of static from this impressions. So if you look underneath, you can see that's embossed. And then I've got that embossed heart on the top that I can then highlight. I should be able to highlight that now. Then, what do I want now? Let's have the heart on some white card, like we've done with the others. And let's just wipe that stencil, because we've got a nice juicy ink pad on there. You know what I'm going to be doing afterwards, don't you? Looking for a black ink pad. So let's spritz this card. I don't think I spritzed the previous one, the craft. Let's take this. Let's just move that. There we go. It's just nice to do something different with your stencils. Doesn't matter whether you're using 6 by 6, but it's just a good way of just experimenting with your products. It definitely makes a difference when you spritz that card. Can you see? Got a nice, lovely heart on there, and you can see that's embossed. Now, if you want to do, we've got one. I've used all the stencils I wanted to use, so let's use the fern. Have we got a white piece of card left? Oh, let's just use a piece of 4 by 6. So if you want to use 4 by 6, you can. And what we can do, let me just, is you can drop everything on the floor like all the professionals do. But what we can do is we can take our fern stencil, take our smaller inks, and we can just add some inks to this. So we've got twisted citron. Let's have some bundled sage. Then we'll have, you could brayer it on if you wish. Let's have some cracked pistachio. And shall we have a little bit of a blue? So let's have some salty ocean. There we go. You can see I'm not taking notice of the squares. We can then spritz our stencil with water. And just so that you can see, no cheating, it's spritzed with water. So let's just leave that on one side. Then you can bring your piece up. Okay. Now, because the stencil's wet, why does it say stencil inky side down? Card inky side down, no idea. So we'll take that. Then we'll take some 4 by 6 piece of card, and I'm going to lay that on the top. Then I'm going to just move this along so you can see. Then I'm going to take my silicone rubber and then the impressions pad. And then let's just take that through. Turn this over. You can see it's all still on there. Can you hear the static from the silicone? Now what you get is, you get the square as well. So let's just bring this all out the way. And then obviously you can spritz this with water. Again, it's just so that it just continues to react. You can just pick up a little bit of your water just to blend that a little bit. There we go. But you can just see, let's have a look. Let's see, now I'm in the mood for playing, and that fern is rather yummy. So you can see, can you see there? You've got, look at that. How wonderful is that? So now I want to try that again. Oh. Let's add all the colours first. This is what I love doing, is playing. So we'll take the twisted citron. That doesn't look like twisted citron. That's crushed olive. You've now got crushed olive. So we'll now take twisted citron. We'll then take a little bit of bundled sage. Then we'll take a little bit of cracked pistachio. Now imagine doing this with all your stencils. Cracked pistachio. And then we'll use a little bit of salty ocean, because it just brings a lovely bit of blue in there. Then you'll knock everything over. So let's make it a little bit more fluid. There we go. Look how it's moving now. And I can't recommend enough actually doing a few at a time while you're doing this. Now when you demonstrate, it doesn't always have to be about finished pieces. This can be just the start of your inspiration. What am I looking for? I'm afraid it's taking me forever, folks, because I can't pick up a piece of card. And I'm going to place this card, this 4x6 piece of card. Then I'm going to use my silicone rubber thingamajiggy and then my impression pad. And all I've done is spend 29 minutes playing. So the silicone mat has a little bit of static. Let's remove that. And then lift this up. Look at that. You know, card in one. How wonderful is that? You know, you could add a sentiment, card in one. Just delicious. And of course, you know I've got to do that with another now. So I'm thinking, let's try the chevrons. I'm going to end up with ink everywhere. You could actually run this stencil through again and you'd actually still get an impression of quite a pale version, which would also be lovely. So let's now try the chevrons that I've just dumped down there. So let's take this now, and we will what if? See, I like asking what if. So what if we stamp the butyl on in grey? So let's take Morning Mist. I think this is quite a dry ink pad. I had to get myself a new one, but again, don't know where that is because I've literally come on here just to have a play. Sometimes a little play just satisfies enough. So shall we have you down there? There you go. You can see how sort of almost looks second generation because my ink pad is quite dry. So I'm going to add, oh, not yet, Tracy. So now we're going to add Twisted Citron. And obviously that VersaFine Clair won't react because it's a permanent ink. What is that down there? Twisted Citron, Bundled Sage. I love Bundled Sage. Cracked Pistachio. And let's add a little bit of Salty Ocean. You see I've got ink. I could mop up there on another piece of card. But if I play in any other ways, we're going to be here for a week. So let's spritz that with water. Spritzed with water, as you can see, because it's all over my hand. So let's give my hand a little bit of a clean. Let's bring up our little piece. But what I want to show you is, look at that on craft card. So it's going to look brilliant on craft card, those colours, aren't they? You can see that just from that piece of craft card. So now, I might not have it in the right place, but hey ho, let's have that round about there. Then our silicone mat, then our impression pad that I can't remember the name of every single time I say it. So what I'm trying to do is just show you, how to spend a little bit of time playing with your products, not necessarily having anything you may use, but you can see that you've got the chevrons. Let me turn that over. The chevrons on there. We could cut this down. I could colour this in maybe the blues. And it's got the embossed design on there. But I'm going to have to do it. Let's grab a piece of craft. I've got a piece of craft 4x6 now. My Pink Frog craft is super thick. So let's do it again. So let's take Twisted Citron, Bundled Sage, Cracked Pistachio, Salty Ocean. Again, you could mop those colours up onto another piece of card. I'm going to spritz with water so that that ink is definitely moving. Dry the hand. Bring up your die cutting machine that you drop bits on the floor with. Place your stencil on there. Then take your, what did you do with your 4x6 piece of card? I do worry about myself at times. I just put this on the top of it. Well. Let's grab another 4x6 then. You'll all be shouting at the screen saying it's such and such a place. So there's the 4x6. Let's just make that a little bit straighter. And can you see? I don't have to rush. I dropped it on the floor with the other pieces, that's why I didn't find it. So then, that little silicone matty thingamajiggy, then the impression pad, then we can run that through. Sorry about just knocking the camera there. Let's now just place these all out of the way because we've got a bit of stuff everywhere. And then you've got your, don't it look lovely? Because you could come in again with some more of the colour just on the craft, but just amazing. And it's wonderful to have a play, and you can see that you can keep layering your colour because you've got it here just from the leftovers. But you can also then, oh dear, right. We could spritz this with water again and you'd get some more ink off there. As you can see, I'm not going to do that. But let's have a look at our pieces of card. Can you see you've got your chevrons on there? But we could quite easily come down with a very light touch with the, what are these called? Oxides. Can you see how lightly I'm coming down? So you come down with the twisted citron. Shall we Shall we use some bundled sage but turn it round? Use a little bit of bundled sage. Like so. Then we will use a little bit of cracked pistachio. So take a little bit of cracked pistachio. And then we'll take a little bit of salty ocean. So let's go this way. Now you only need a light touch, just a little bit of a light touch. You can still go over again if you want a little bit more twisted citron. You can repeat the process and go over with your twisted citron. So if you quite like that twisted citron, you can come back in again. You can also then spritz that with water and just allow it to do its thing. But as a background, as your starting point for a project, how wonderful is that? Just as a starting point. You've also then got your Abutulon, which obviously I was saying that you can come in and colour this. So colour your Abutulon in the blues, and then you've got these embossed chevrons, and you can sort of highlight. My desk is all wet. Or you can even, Let me just come in. There. So there's a chevron here. Let me show you. Now there's a chevron just here. And then where do you go to? There you are. There. And then here. And then it's like doing a little bit of a different spotlight. So bring that in. Bring that there. And then, so it's just like a spotlight, but your spotlight is the chevron. And then obviously you could add a little bit of colour to your Abutolon. So you could just colour this area here if you wanted to. You can bring out your Abutolon a little bit more. Like so. But you can see, even with no finished pieces, you've got the start of some inspiration. You can see you're coming up with ideas. Just for your piece. You can see that I'm coming up with ideas, so I could just add a little bit of colour in this area if I wanted to. So there's another idea. Then we've got our lovely ferns, which personally I think that looks beautiful as is. You could add just a little bit of text. Where's my TE9, 10, 11. So you could add a little bit of your text. You could take your little A8 stamp, which is teeny weeny weeny weeny. Let me see if I've got a different grey. Have we got another grey? There we have. Let's see if that's a bit better. So let's use this Morning Mist and add little touches of stamping. Oh yes, isn't it funny how you know instantly, you think, oh yes, I like that. I now need a wipe. So I'm going to add that here. Just wonderful. Just a little bit of grey. Just a little bit of grey. I could cut out a fern and add another piece to that, but look at the grey stamping on there. I could do that forever. I just think that is lovely. Just adding a little bit of that grey stamping. Look, you've got the word art on there. I just think it looks lovely like that. So you've got an idea there. So sometimes it's really good not to always think you've got to create something. And on the little A8 stamp, if you look at the little A8 stamp, it's got free your imagination. So we could, and that's exactly what we're doing here, freeing our imagination. So we could take our little stamp, free your imagination. And what I could do is, let's just place that back. I could cut out another fern and add that to that. Just, you know, you could even add the ones we've just taken back here. I'm going to pick this up again with a little bit of, is that grey? Yes, it is. You could take a little bit with the A8 stamp. Oh, see, now I'm in full-on play mode now. Full-on play mode. And I just love it. I can see how, if I play a little bit further, the ideas are developing beautifully. Just love them. So they just develop really nicely. I can even add a little bit to the craft. So let's add a little bit of the grey. This Morning Mist is a truly wonderful, wonderful colour. But you can see, obviously I will dry when I need to dry if I'm stamping over the oxides, but you can see we're coming up with those ideas. Now we've got hundreds here. We've got a white one. So with the white one, let's move that grey out there. So this has got no colour on it at all. It's just embossed. You could use the embossed or the debossed area. And again, we can still come over and we can use our inks and just direct to paper. So that's the Twisted Citron. Then we could use the Bundled Sage. So let's take the Bundled Sage. Turn your card little in different areas each time, just so that it catches different parts of your card. Then we'll take the peacock feathers. Take a little bit of the peacock feathers. And what you're doing is you're just playing with your ideas. Then we'll take a little bit of the Salty Ocean. So I've been on for 48 minutes and we've got so many ideas now. So you don't need to add much more to that. We could spritz that with water just to soften everything, and we can leave that to do its thing. Okay, and then shall we have, I mean, how many more do you need to do? Let's grab a bird. Where's the, we've got the chevrons. Where's the, there we go. That one, the vine. You could also use your pigment ink pad, your white one, or white acrylic paint. Let's just bend that a bit. So I could come down with my Glacier White. You could even emboss this Glacier White if you wanted to. Clear emboss it. Obviously it would emboss all the areas that you've got that ink, but it would give it quite a nice different effect. You could also go over it with your white paint. But now you've got lots of ideas to play with your projects. So let's do one with the distress background with like those diamondy harlequin-y shapes. go. So rather nice with the white. Let's have the little beard. Have I got that the right way? No, Tracy, it does help if you've got the embossed way, lovely. And if you use your white paint, you can go over many, many times and dry brush. Just so that you can see, so that you have him in the background, and you could then also have one stamped in the foreground in the black if you wanted to. So could I highlight that a little bit more? You don't also have to do it that way. You could, stencils please, grab your stencil again, put your stencil over the embossed area, then you could add your white ink to the beard and just emboss him with clear embossing. So what I'm doing is I'm just giving you some ideas just for a little bit of playtime. So you can have your beard completely highlighted with that white. Whoops. And then you place your beard back over the top like so. And we'll faff a little bit. There we go. Then I'm going to grab I've got a clear gloss by Wow here. And you can see I'm not rushing because I had to faff then to grab a piece of copier paper. So then take my clear gloss. Hopefully it's stayed wet enough, long enough. Leave the stencil in place. I know it's all over my stencil, I can worry about that later. So then let's just clean a little bit of that up if you don't want it sort of everywhere. So just going it around. So shall we just emboss that? So you can see I'm doing 100 things at once. So let's just heat my heat tool up. Just heat that. There we can go. I can see that going now. So just turn that. And then what you've got is your embossed bird. Now you can go in again and add another layer, because you can use your Versamark back over that. So you can put your stencil over again and add your Versamark, so it ends up like a glass tile like finish. Or you can use your texture paste translucent and add that to your piece as well. So what you can do then, oh, I'm kicking everything over, folks, absolutely everything. So you've got another idea there, but you can also, which one have I just put over there? Where's the one I added with the stamping on it? So here, on this one, you could take your, now I'm getting too carried away, but hey ho. I could take one of the ferns. Then I could take my texture paste, translucent, which Tracy hasn't cleaned the top of the lid, as you can hear. Take a little bit of that translucent. Now, if you're going over oxides, this is where you can use your Distress Glaze to stop that colour moving. But for me, I'm just playing, so I'm just going for it like you do. I don't really need much, and that's why I'm faffing with a little bit. There we go, let's lift that up. So now, when this dries, that will be translucent, so you'll be able to see through it. You'll be able to see through that. And it's just, that's why I like playing so much. So we've got this one here that's absolutely soaking wet. So what I can do is, let's just add this little tiny bit of paste I've got left on there. I can then come in and I'll use my finger just to add whatever texture paste I've got on my stencil. And I'll just wipe it off and I'll clean my stencil onto here. And then I've got another translucent fern on there. And obviously I'll show those when those are all clear. Well, then we could get another print out of this quite easily by just using your wipe onto a piece of card. Got a little bit of a thread there. There we go. So you can see I'm just enjoying myself and playing. So, for instance, you can then bring in a stencil that you hope you can find, but you can't. You can then bring in this stencil and you can pinpoint a couple of your chevrons and add a little bit of texture paste, translucent, because it's all going to be see-through, just over the top. And let's have this one here, like so. And we'll add a little bit of translucent there. Can you see how I'm playing with my product? So I've got a couple of translucent chevrons there. Now I'm going to be careful where I place these chevrons. I could bring in my bird, and I've got texture paste on here. So I could just bring in a little bit of this texture paste around where the bird is, just a little bit with that chevron. And do you know what else you can do then? Once these have dried clear, you can use your alcohol inks, because that will be like a slick surface. So you could use your alcohol pens and inks. So there's always lots of ways you can do it. We've then got this chevron background, so we can bring this in that we created, and you can then come in and just add a little bit more. You can see I'm being a bit specific where I add the chevron. So this will all dry clear, and obviously I'll show these once they are clear. Now, is there anything I can put this on? Because I've got some thingy paste here. So I've got just a white one here, so I can add this over here just with my finger, just so that I'm not wasting that translucent texture paste. Whilst you've got this texture paste and it's translucent, you can add some of your lindies. So everywhere I've added this, I could sprinkle with lindies. So just trying to give you as many ideas as possible. So let's use the translucent paste here, just over that one. And you can see I'm not wasting any of that translucent paste. But you can see that I've got loads of projects now that I could quite easily create with. So what other projects have I got? You've got a translucent fern on. There's nowhere to put these now because I've got translucent texture paste on everything. Yes, absolutely everything. What else have I got? So I've got my fern here. So we'll add a little bit of a chevron going over this. Just so that you can see, and I can see obviously where let's just clean that off, remove that from around the edge. Don't want it just sitting on the edge. Let's grab a little bit of a wipe so I can clean my palette knife. We'll just take that off. So lots of ideas how you can change up just playing with a bit of stenciling. So then I've got a translucent chevron there, and I can add colour to this after that has dried. So you've got lots of ideas. We've got our heart one here that again we can, let's bring, look at this, I forgot, this has got embossing powder on. Yes, please remember to clean your stencils, unlike I've just done with this one that's got the embossing powder on. You don't want to leave that on there. So just be mindful of that. Just give that a little bit of a clean. What was I going to do? Heart. You can also sort of put your heart back in place if you wish. And then you can just blend the colours over. I'm not going to do that, so you can just blend the colours over should you wish. I'm going to add, I'll make this the last one because obviously you're going to get bored of me just playing. So just use my little bit of twisted citron. Then I'm going to use the bundled sage. Then I will take the cracked pistachio and then a little bit of the salty ocean. And again, there's options for me to, again, use the A8 stamp, use the grey ink, which I'm a bit obsessed by. And you can add little bits of stamping. Obviously, I can add florals to this heart. I can stamp a floral afterwards. So it works rather nicely. So just adding, I always forget which bit I've actually inked, so I have to turn it up a little bit so I can actually see which parts I've actually inked. So a little bit more. And again, I can dry these afterwards, but it just adds, let's just move that colour, a little bit of stamping to that. Again, I can always spritz with water just so that that softens a little bit. So I'm hoping from that video you have got lots and lots and lots of ideas to use with your stamps and stencils. I've spritzed water all over that. You've just got hundreds of ideas here, and this doesn't even cover all of the ones that I have embossed. You know, you've still got these on the craft. You've got your bird that we did that you can then colour with alcohol inks. You've still got your piece here that we can go over. We can add a piece with texture paste. Just lots of ideas just to keep you going. There's white on white where we've added a little bit of texture paste. So I'm hoping you've got a little bit of inspiration from that and that you've enjoyed a little bit of playtime. So love to all, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.